All right. And we're good on YouTube?
Yeah.
All right. And you can see Marcos. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Isla Vista Community Services District Board of Directors. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded, and let's do roll call.
Dr. Brett?
Here.
Aguilar?
Here.
Topliff?
Here.
Freeman?
Here.
Flaherty?
Here.
And we have Bachelor and Bertrand.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Aniscoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we're going to move to the consent agenda. We just have one item. Any comment on the one item from directors? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Made by Flaherty. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment on the meeting minutes? If you have general public comment, we'll go to you in a moment. Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brett?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Topliff?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Now we're going to move to item 3, the public comment period. This is the chance for any member of the public to speak on any matter that's within our jurisdiction as the board of directors that are not on tonight's agenda. We will not take action on any item that is not on our agenda, except as provided for by law. And do we have any public comments general today? I see you, sir. Go ahead, you'll have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Planet Thunderstriker. I recently spoken and will again on the 6th to Santa Barbara City Council, the Harbor Commission, and in Sylvain twice in October with items contextually or directly relevant to this list issues. I strongly recommend adequate research among those council districts that are not currently corrupted related to this. I'll begin with at the end of last school year, screening an emergency vehicle response after the performance of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, an 80s song repopularized by the artist Board. I don't know if I'll have time to get back to her involvement later. I was assaulted near the old jail during midday. I handed hospital reports of a fracture to Dan McGrew, prosecution investigator. A couple with 10 dogs cornered a few hundred feet from where I was detained and arrested got away, and there was never a case started by sheriff or prosecution. Multiple sheriffs and UCPD response. Sergeant Harris, over a year later, lied that he was supposed to sign a warrant for failure to appear in court. I learned later the judge requested a signed affidavit by the alleged victim. An officer whose name starts and ends with a G was involved in a situation at a student's residence who agreed to speak with me previously, with him and another officer arriving there at the same time. The G named officer said he was the detaining officer of the assault day and his version of involvement will be suspect. The Santa Barbara Independent was given some information and a couple weeks later ran an incorrect piece on Dan McGrew. The Montecito paper had a write-up about the up-and-coming journalist who ran that piece. There is a plethora of issues related to IV crime and corruption I can't address with such limited time. Just today, there was an issue with the client security at the district and park and rec office. I documented it and the scenario at the county admin building in Santa Barbara City, where the receptionist for Mrs. Hartman and Mr. Hart was hiding behind the door. Months previous, there was no issue and papers were presented to Mr. Hart's aides. And this is where I deviate. I don't know how much time I have. My only song is Taiwan Thunderstrike. I was probably nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2020 when I went to the Los Angeles Chinese consulate and made a suggestion to a worldwide student organization. That's part of the reason I was trying to get in contact with that student when the cops showed up. I made a suggestion. Countries have the option for 2 slots. One is government individual. The Indian-China border conflict ended and China mailed seats throughout the world via a Taiwan shipping company. So I'm probably nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize and I am treated like crap in this town. I'm going to ask the general manager to scan this because this is how 3 songs by this Lord interact with one by a non-famous person, that's clearly not a coincidence, that I'm not stupid, mentally ill, that I am intelligent and I'm involved in a scandal and I'm dealing with more corruption than you guys have probably ever had to deal with, and it should be international news too. Is my 4 minutes, do I have more time or?
You got 30 seconds.
There's always people with dogs off leash around me, and clearly what's been going on in Solvang, there was the new police chief, a potential lawsuit, and the city manager up and left right away. Related to other things, I filed a civil lawsuit against Lord and Taylor Swift a month before Trump fired the FBI director. So that's why the officers who knew about this in Solvang, who offered taking it up to the FBI, I couldn't take them up on that because it wouldn't necessarily go anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right. This is normally when I'd ask Jonathan if you have any other public comment on Zoom. And Jonathan is back here now. We will ask him when he returns to his computer.
And then I go on to say.
Is there any other public comment on Zoom?
There's none.
All right, we will close the public comment period, and we're going to move to discussion and action items. I believe we're going to be delaying item 4.1.
Yeah, county staff is unavailable today to present, so
Excellent.
We're not just delaying until later, but like to another meeting.
there'll be another meeting, probably December 13th, but I'm trying to schedule the new time, but that's it.
Okay, so we will move to item 4.2, the Isla Vista Community Center Garden Update.
Okay, sorry, let me get reoriented for a second. So I wanted to give an update on the community garden, and Maya is here on this meeting, and so is Katie Maynard. So what was attached was the proposals and plans that the board had reviewed at a higher level, like the first figure one. Let me share my screen, and then so we had this plan that we had reviewed at a few meetings ago earlier in the year. Off that plan, the county wanted some more specific drawings. So our new community garden interns made these sketches of where the community garden could be. So this is the one along the side of the building on Embarcadero Del Mar, and then on the front planters near the door. And then these two are in the back, kind of facing the Nonstop restaurant. So the update I had for you all is that the county did not approve the community garden plans over here, the ones along the side of the building and the front. And the reason being is that they have upcoming drainage projects that they will be doing eventually. We don't know the details of those at all, but they said that's the reason why they didn't want it there. And they might have ADA access issues that they need that plot of land for the future. So I didn't get much specifics beyond that, but they said that we were approved for the back. And so that's something that is moving forward still. And today we wanted to get your feedback and direction on switching to some different options in terms of location. So Maya had some ideas of where we can have, it won't be the same scale as what we originally were trying to do on that side of the building, but if we can still get a couple more plots planted in some flat areas near the patio. So I will let Maya share her screen to kind of go over the locations and designs of the other, if we could move to still do some of the same work.
Yeah, so thank you, Jonathan, for prefacing a little bit about the email. I'm going to drop a link actually if you want to pull it up on your end. But basically we had been planning, or just ideas on like how to beautify the patio, in the same sense that Katie's team was really putting a lot of work into the garden. And they really did a lot to amend that soil already and have a whole garden plan on what kind of produce and things that they wanted to put. So we were originally thinking about putting these planters in the back for some succulents or something, just for literally just for decoration. But when I heard this news, I brought it to Jonathan that maybe this could be a solution for the time being. Maybe we could put it on the back patio, have these raised beds. They're very portable, so we can move them around. And hopefully, I mean, there will probably be some adjustments to the original plan, but maybe they can use this space to plant the produce that they were planning on planting. This is just an idea. I didn't want to come to you with just a problem. I wanted to come with at least an idea of a direction that we could go. However, I'm open to any of your thoughts and direction. I know that last time when we discussed behind the patio, we weren't quite there yet as far as planning wise and what we wanted to allocate funds for, but this is just another idea of how we don't lose all of that progress and all those ideas that we already had. And yeah, this was actually brought to me by one of my interns, this design, and I do think it will look nice, but open to your thoughts.
And we will say, like, there was some work done already on the site. We were starting to prepare the soil, so Katie can answer any questions about that and what her interns were working on, but they were starting to amend the soil, and they did do it, and they did amend the ones in the back that we want to look at too. So I don't think that would be wasted work, because eventually we will get back to that site one way or another. So we will eventually be planting there, but we're just not approved for the indefinite future until we know more from the county.
Well, thank you for that, Jonathan. And thank you for the bringing forth the idea, Maya, and for your work on this. Are there any questions from the board? Director Freeman.
I'd heard there were also compost bins that were going to potentially have to move. Do we have a specific location where those might end up going?
There's no decision or location for having a compost pile at the community center yet. It's an idea for sure that we've shared that we'd like to do, but there's no site yet. And the garden is something that's actually happening.
These are separate thought processes, and I just incorrectly got them conflated.
I mean, there was talks like, how do we align the two, but we're focusing on the garden mainly right now. We'll get to the I mean, we still have other issues to resolve with the compost collective before we, add a new pile. So we'll get there sometime next year.
Okay. And then one other question I have is the location that's on the back of the community center is right where a bunch of cars come in and out of little parking spots there. And I'm wondering if that has effects on using that location for gardening.
Well, we are approved to use it, and maybe I'll turn it over to Katie to share any issues that your staff has faced in getting it ready, but I haven't heard of any.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So Katie's on.
Hi everybody. Thank you for letting me join. My name is Katie Maynard. I'm the advisor of the student intern who's working on this space and helping to manage this project from the Edible Campus program side. In response, Member Freeman, to your question, we would be concerned about any stormwater drainage coming off of the road into any garden beds, because as water from a roadway gets into a garden area, that can really affect the soil. So that's an area where we'd be more concerned about. The bed that is most close to the parking lot is in a cement raised bed. So there's really not a lot of stormwater drainage going directly into that bed. And so we're not concerned with that bed at this time. You could have air emissions that are just from being around a roadway. That is part of being around any urban garden space. The traffic there is low enough that that's not a substantial concern for us, and would be equatable to other neighborhood gardens, even such as the Methodist Garden, which has a similar level of traffic around it.
Go ahead.
I guess my thought process is with parking spots, one could imagine people actually backing into parking spots occasionally. I don't generally do that, but I know people who always do that. And then they're essentially like just have their exhaust pipe directly pointed at the garden bed in that particular location. So I was just, yeah.
Well,
we do not believe.
Go ahead, Katie.
We do not believe that would be a high enough level of pollution to affect the health of the plants.
And I was just gonna say, we could, if it becomes an issue, put in signs about not parking that way.
I have a question for Jonathan, Maya, whoever wants to take a stab at it, because you put together this great graphic of the outline of what was proposed to the county. I think I'm just having trouble reading what part of the building is what. So the areas that were proposed that were rejected are the areas that face the street Embarcadero Del Mar. Is that correct?
Yes, along the sidewalk.
And the county's response was that we could not do that because of drainage issues and planned ADA improvements.
Yes, I can read you the exact language. No, and there is another component to this that I didn't mention yet, but I'll bring it up in a second. So Capital Projects is conducting an ADA study and looking to remedy the drainage issue. This conflicts with proposed location facing Embarcadero Del Mar. That's what they said.
All right, okay. Well, that's good to know. I know that is something that's funded. I guess it just, at least in the conversations I've been involved in, that wasn't an area where the ADA was going to be fixed. So kind of a bummer to hear, but glad that we are approved for these other areas. I generally like the idea that you've proposed, Maya, of being creative with those more portable boxes. One question that I have that I spoke recently to Carly about from the Compost Collective when we were at the Pumpkin Smash was we're just looking at the site and looking for parts of the plot of land that may be underutilized. And one of the areas that we had noticed was kind of that triangle shaped area that's out in front of the clinic building, or the front, like the front door of the clinic building. Is that an area that's been considered to put something there?
Yeah, I believe in the, and I'll let Katie and Jonathan speak more on this, but I believe in our first really garden pitch, we had proposed like the two ideas, like the triangle idea, and then also just starting with the existing beds. I see, Katie, that you raised your hand, so I'll let you talk more on that.
Maya actually said a lot of what I would, and just that we, after consultation with Jonathan and various stakeholders, we weren't sure if we had enough buy-in to move forward with that project at this time. What we could do, if the board is interested in us starting to look at that expansion, is we could complete our stakeholder vetting process and work with Jonathan to complete the feasibility assessment of that space. But it is a space that we were hoping to grow out into, and we're planning on, in our budget pitch for next year, to pitch expanding into that space. So that maybe this is, I do think it's a good idea to consider potentially expanding into that space earlier in the timeline. The changes from the county are a substantial reduction in the amount of space that we do have to garden. I'm very excited about Maya's suggestion of the raised beds. I do think that that will also help. But I think this is going to be a yes and approach where we'll want to do that and also continue to look at those other spaces. So we didn't see anything that said we shouldn't move forward with the space in front of the clinic building. It was just that we had more vetting to do to be able to feel confident that we're ready to move forward with that space. And so it would be great to hear from the board that there's an interest in us going ahead and pursuing that space sooner.
Yeah, I don't think we had consensus on the board yet. There was some disagreement on whether we wanted to keep that open land or have something built into it. So if the board is now there, we can definitely start moving more forward into it. But I think our spring festival hadn't happened yet when we first discussed this. So we were looking towards that as like a large festival ground rather than a garden space. But yeah, like Katie said, it was in the original proposals. So if it's something we want to do, we could look back to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you for that. That answers my questions. Any other questions from the board?
Just to comment that having had the experience with the Spring Festival, it didn't seem like that was a piece of land that was necessary for the crowd flow for that. That it seems like it could be dedicated to this purpose without really impacting our ability to have events there.
I agree.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Director Flaherty?
Yeah, I agree with Carrie on that. With the placement of these, I don't think an event like that in the future would be super drastically impacted by that. And I think the added community benefit of the gardens, especially because that would be like a year-round thing, I think is really important.
And I can try to quickly bring up that original proposal from earlier this year. So if you want to keep going, I'll bring that up.
And it seems like if we're losing so much ground based on the county's edict, that we need to expand somewhere else so that we create something with enough presence to reinstate it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you and others have said that, like, this is a really substantial reduction, and it's kind of disappointing to see, at least from what I understand about the planned building improvements. But it's also kind of a tough way for, I feel, us to hear about potential building improvements is by asking, hey, can we do this thing? And being told, no, we're doing these improvements. I mean, to me, this highlights the reason that one of our board goals is to acquire public facilities in Isla Vista so that we can have more of that say. But put in a tough situation, I feel like I can really trust Maya and Katie and the rest of our staff to try and figure out a creative solution that will still have a good amount of scale, because that scale is definitely what we're looking for. Just we're going to need scale to meet the goals that you've outlined in the proposal of creating more edible food space and beautifying the place around the community center. So I'm confident that you all can come up with a creative solution, and we'll consult all of the relevant stakeholders, including the county, to figure that out. Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there any public comment on the garden proposal?
I like what people said about, really going the extra distance if the opportunity is there. I mean, Isla Vista is such a unique area, and it's really nice. And now we're dealing with drought that's been going on for so long, and some of these places just have so much dead grass, and it's like maybe some people can really start, putting their heads together from the school and figure out what can go in all the parks, that are maybe some kind of fruit trees that don't take much water or whatever. But yeah, of course, you guys had some great ideas about, just going the distance and not really holding back. And I think that's a good way to look at it.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other public comments on Zoom, Jonathan?
None. Maya's a hand up.
Go ahead, Maya.
Can I share my screen really quick, Jonathan? Is that okay?
Yes.
I'm disabled right now. There we go. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to give a little more of a visual as to what I was talking about. So ignore some of this stuff. This was just some ideas we were having, or my intern actually very kindly put together. But this is kind of what we're thinking, what these raised beds, where they'll go, is kind of on this side part. And yes, eventually, like maybe we put picnic tables and stuff as well. But this is just kind of like a rough idea to give like a little bit of a visual of like, this is kind of where we're thinking of where those might go. And the plants, like a lot of the things that they wanted to do, there was like a native Chumash garden portion that we're missing, and the food edible pollinator section. That's really what we're talking about, what we'll need to move. And I think those are really important pieces of the garden design that both Katie and her intern put together. So any way we can really salvage that part of the plan and make it something that's still feasible, I think is really important. In addition to potential expansion, but just the ideas that were already there. I think it's really important to preserve and protect them in any way that we can.
Yeah. And I've got the location that was proposed earlier in the year for a standalone garden area. So This is one idea. This is a triangle here that's talked about. So this is what we were trying to do. This is another location option that was there given. So yeah, Katie has her hand up.
I just want to do a quick clarification. The blue triangle that was shown is the land that is connected to the community center. It wouldn't be the full garden area. The primary garden area that we're looking for was in the orange box diagram that Jonathan showed. We did get feedback from the community. Yeah, so just the orange box would be the garden area. We did get feedback from many of the user groups of the community center that the area that was just outside of the shaded area connected to the community center, they really liked having that as like an open area. Yeah, I think that's where the mouse is now. It's in the diagram here. It's in the kind of fenced area. And that area, there was a lot of excitement about being able to move from indoor spaces to outdoor spaces fluidly, and from indoor spaces out into the field fluidly. So that was part of why we were looking primarily at the orange box as the main garden area.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Maynard. Director Flaherty.
I just have a question. Maya, would you mind putting the picture that you showed back up on the screen?
Yeah, did you want the picture of the beds or like where they might go?
Oh, where they might go.
Of course.
Thank you.
Here. So
Okay.
kind of ignore these circles and the pebbles. Those are just ideas that she also had, but like these long stretches on the side.
Yeah, I really like the placement of that. It almost like formalizes that space a bit more by making it like an outdoor room in a way.
Yeah.
So I thought that could actually really benefit like programming and stuff too. So I'm excited about that placement. And I think that looks really good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Maya's got 2 benches over there too.
Yeah, picnic tables, just sliding that idea in while we're talking. We would love Ivy Beautiful to paint them and make them like a really cool focal point for people to stop and study at.
Nice.
Go ahead, Director Topples.
I'm just wondering then what our next steps are and what the timeline looks like for moving this ahead.
Well, if we've got your direction that the orange spot that we had shown earlier is something we should pursue, we'll start coming up with a proposal for that, and then we'll hopefully get the county's approval on that, and we can let you know when that happens.
And how long did the county approval take last time?
A couple weeks, so it
Oh, so
wasn't
it's
too
pretty
bad.
fast.
It wasn't
That's
too
good.
bad. Yeah.
Excellent. Do we need to make a formal motion on this, or is just kind of the feedback we've given so far a good
I
direction?
think this is good feedback. Yeah, we can come back for a motion later.
Excellent.
Katie is, I think Katie still has her hand up.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
on next steps. So 2 other components I wanted to mention. We had created a smaller budget for the community center adjacent gardens and a larger budget for doing the one by the clinic. So when we bring the proposal back, just to be transparent, we also wanted to communicate we would bring that additional budget back. And so that would also be a part of the conversation and considering the proposal. The other thing that we can do is provide we can go back to the original list of stakeholders that we'd been collecting feedback from the community. And there was a few folks that we still needed to resolve some comments from that we hadn't prior to getting approval for the adjacent ones. And that's part of why we didn't move forward with it. So I can work with Jonathan and Maya and our new intern for the community center to make sure that all public comment is addressed and that we can communicate to you what public comment is and how we've gone about addressing those concerns as well when we present back to you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you for your diligence in working with these variety of stakeholders. All right. Well, thank you everyone for presenting on this. I'm really excited. The visuals really bring it to life in such a fun way. So I know that you'll be hard at work on this, and we'll look forward to an update in the future. All right, we're going to close item 4.2 and move to item 4.3, the 2023 Spring Community Festival planning.
Excellent. So let me share my screen here too. I was working on both of these agenda items today. Okay, so I gave some background in this memo. It's actually the same background from last year, so we did reuse the work. We added some background about what happened this last year, which we did do an RFP process to plan a concert community festival here in People's Park and the Ivy Community Center. We had about 1,000 people in and out throughout the 5-hour period. Predominantly at the end, we had local acts, music, games, lounge chairs, and food trucks and hydration. And an AMT tent. So that's what we did this last year. Our objectives were, this is what our objectives were, and I think they'd be the same still for this year. What we're coming today to the board is to seek direction on how to move forward with the 2023 event. In the budget process, we put 95,000 dedicated to this event. And then the community center budget has this major spring event for 4,000 that could be part of this. Excuse me. So we have, $101,000 in the budget for something on spring 2023. But we're looking to get your direction. Should we continue forward with the same general concept and scope with the improvements that we already identified at our debrief meeting and other improvements we've come up with since then? Should we pivot and try something pretty different? Or one thing we heard at the last debrief meeting was maybe we scale down parts of this event and then try other things. So, using the resources from the scale down. So that's kind of the three directions we can see. If there's other ideas, 4 or 5 different directions, let's hear them. But that's what we're thinking. We think it's really important to partner with IVRPD on this. And me and Kimberly had a preliminary discussion. She still needs to go to her board for direction as well. But we spoke briefly that we're both excited to work together on something. When Maya has some ideas, I'll turn it over to her in a second. More different kinds of activities we can add into the mix. Last year we were focused, it was very heavy on music, but there were some other activities available, but Maya has some ideas for other ones. Also, one thing from last time is we did have some enhanced safety resources like the EMT tent and the safety stations, but there could be other safety enhancements that we make to the community. So like additional water distribution and restrooms, for example, and sexual assault responders being stationed out here. And also another aspect to look into this is event planning and how we want to do that. So last year, we had a much different staff structure a year ago. Maya just started in the middle of planning for Deltopia or for the Spring Festival. And so we could continue with the same model where we hire on a consultant or company like CBF Productions to handle 90% of the work, and we would be advising and overseeing them. Or we can have a different mix where our staff takes on more work. That of course means that we can't do other things as much because we're doing this, but it might cost less, or the cost would be spread out differently. So I really just wanted to hear your all's thoughts and ideas for how we want to approach this event for 2023, and we can have a more formalized proposal. We want to have also a formal discussion with IVRPD after their board has had a chance to discuss to see what they're open to partnering on. So we don't have that information quite just yet. And then Maya, do you want to share some of the ideas that you've come up with of how other additions that we could make to this event?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I reached out to Jonathan about potentially taking on more responsibility for this event, or at least helping out if so, because it last year it was at the community center. And so I just drafted a couple of ideas of different directions that we could go. I was really inspired by a Halloween event and how much of a great turnout that we had, and some of the activities that really engaged both of the kids, but also more of the adult population as well. And I know Deltopia is not one necessarily for children. However, I do think this carnival style could be something that would be really fun for the college community. So some of my ideas include having really large mural displays for taking pictures. That's something that I see a lot around this time. Even last year, a lot of people were taking pictures in front of the plant wall in the community center. So I think having something really large that people can take pictures in front of would be a really cool addition. Still having the local live music, potentially some karaoke, continuing with additional public restrooms and water stations. Also some small scale carnival rides, for example, a bounce house, a water slide, things of that nature. A Ferris wheel, interactive games with prizes, for example, like a dunk tank, or I also saw something that was a mechanical shark, not a mechanical bull. Just little ideas like that. Also having food trucks, some of the classic ones like Roger's Tacos or maybe Shaved Ice. And then also having meal vouchers for local businesses. That means both for lunch and dinner, but also for breakfast, and trying to get those out in the community as part of our outreach. And I also did mention to Jonathan that I think it would be really great to have sexual assault responders on site, a big table front and center that people have to walk by on their way to different places. And again, always having the safety sites and EMT sites as a resource as well. Yeah, those are my ideas and 10 cents. I'll hand it back to you, Jonathan. Thank you.
And one last point of the ideas is, I think we would want to still do something at the community center location, but also some more distribution of the activities to other parts of Isle of Vista. So maybe the mural picture wall can be next to some bathrooms, and water distribution at another park somewhere else, so that there's different sites to get people to, because, you know, we did, obviously everyone saw a lot of the traffic, almost all the traffic was on Del Playa. And how can we divert that from the street at least?
Excellent. Thank you for that, Jonathan and Maya. We'll do questions from the board, Director Flaherty.
Oh yeah, that just reminded me that that's something that we talked about last year too. So
Yeah.
we mentioned that as like, well, how we see future years happening. So it's exciting that we're at the phase where we can consider having like multiple locations with different stuff on it. So that's just exciting to hear also. Yeah, I definitely support for sure all of the safety resources. Obviously, that's our number one priority. And so, yeah, as many like restrooms, water, food as possible, I think is just so important. Definitely multiple locations, especially with those resources too. And I really love the ideas of the mural displays also. I think that's a really great way to get word out about the district, but also have it be fun as well, and a representation of local artists. I think that's super exciting.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Director Flaherty. I'll also voice that I'm really excited about the opportunity to provide more safety resources during the event. Recently, we had the partnership at the safety stations with County Fire, where we had fire, paramedic, EMTs on site, helping people who had too much to drink. And from witnessing that, it was a partnership that was working. There were people being helped by those personnel. And so I would love if there's an opportunity for us to really scale something like that up, you know, just thinking more generally about Deltopia this year. And I love the idea of just providing more of those resources to people through organizations that support survivors. One thing that I'll mention that a good group to maybe consult in our planning more safety wise is Associated Students. At the recent IV Safe meeting, it was shared by the EVPLA Haley Stankiewicz that they are interested in bringing IV Safe and more of a peer-to-peer safety outreach program that is student initiated back for this spring quarter. And that was really exciting to hear, because as a former many-time volunteer for that program, it's so valuable, the peer-to-peer connectivity that you get to have with people to help them stay out of the justice system and stay safe. So it would be really cool if maybe that's a good safety innovation too. I'll just share in terms of all these ideas, they sound so fun and so great. And, you know, if there's one thing that I've learned about myself, it's that planning a party is not one of my strengths. So I'm really looking at all these details and feeling they sound really great. I'm sure that there's some of them that will work out and come to fruition. But from a high level, you know, perspective, the thing that's most important is I think establishing that partnership with IVRPD. They really proved that they can throw a very successful event that does take people away from the party scene and into the downtown area. And I think that together we can really bring what we've built over the last year during Deltopia, what they built during Halloween, and what we built during Halloween too, with family-friendly activities together to form something that's really great. So I think that that's the most important thing. And I'll really bring it back to the goal of this event in general. After, you know, we had probably about a half dozen community meetings over the course of 3 years about this subject specifically, where people got to share feedback for what they want to see. And what we heard loud and clear is that we need something that's going to help give people an alternative to what's going on Del Playa, and something that will be attractive enough to draw people away from that. And so I think that we can really do that. I think we did it last year, and I think we can scale it up and really get even higher attendance numbers with something like this. So I'm really excited about the direction this is moving forward, and very excited that IVRPD is so interested in partnering together. I think that it will be a really fruitful partnership. Director Freeman.
Since the agenda had asked for some specific commentary, or some commentary on some specific options, including running an event very similar to the one last time, trying to scale up, scale down, how to allocate staff time. I've got some commentary on the event again, some of which you've heard, but I'll provide a very fast summary, and some thoughts. So one thing I pointed out before, and which is that I feel like the number of people served is the wrong metric. The letter that we have today says that there were 1,000 people who attended the event, but if the goal is diversion, we need to think about the maximum number of people that attended at any particular point in time, not the number of people who flowed through. That said, just to momentarily point out something I had never pointed out before, I should say, I had not pointed out last time when we talked about this. If we were talking about the number of people who flowed through the event at $100,000 for the event, that's $100 per person. And when you think about some of the concerts people are going to, where they get a lot of value out of $40 that they pay at the door, us paying $100,000 for 1,000 people seems excessive. But regardless, at that last event, there were really only 150 people who we actually succeeded in diverting. I was taking photos from overhead during the peak of the attendance and sitting there counting out people, putting little stick tally marks on their heads and everything. And I counted about 150 people, which for what it's worth was larger than the estimates that the police in the area had, but that was a much more accurate estimate. I did talk to the police after the event last time, and none of them thought that it was useful. And this was, to be clear, not me going to them and talking about the really useless event. This was me kind of setting up the conversation as, hey, I'm one of the people who was involved in that event. What do you think of that event? And they all were trying to break it to me about how I don't know if I saw that many people at the event. And it was like this awkward process of them trying to figure out how to tell me, thinking that I wanted to be pleased about the event, that it wasn't something that they found useful. And then after I heard that feedback, I would then tell them how much it cost, and they all experienced sticker shock. I thereby think at best, we should, if we're going to do this, we should scale back the amount of money that we're spending. There were a lot of things that I think we were doing there that, and we talked about even after the time afterwards, that the idea of scaling back aspects of it, scaling back aspects of the fencing and organizational process of things, because things that looked like they might be expenses that weren't particularly critical parts of it. One thing that I pointed out, I don't remember if people agreed with this one, I don't think they did, but I'm not saying that they did, I should say, was that the double-decker stage with the giant television screen seemed a little bit excessive for that space. I've run events in that space before. I don't really think we need that there. The $100,000 does amount to 5 to 10% of our entire budget for the year. It is a massive expenditure for an organization that has a bunch of other things that we're trying to get done, and which I've often maintained. You mentioned events in the measure text, but in the actual AB3, when we look at the purposes of the district, we were trying to have it not overlap with the Parks District, which does work on recreation. Looking at IVRPD, I think what they did for Halloween, as people are saying here, really seemed to work. And so I would be very excited about trying to have something where they lead. And if they are excited about doing something during these time slots, then we can try to support them in ways that really fit our strengths. And if they, for whatever reason, decide that this is not the optimal time of the day or the kind of event to operate, then we should take a step back as opposed to trying to, well, let's run that part of ourselves, which is kind of how we got into this in the past. Particularly though, no matter what people think of that, I would like to stress, I do not believe that we should be allocating more staff time to this task. That was one of the options that was on the list today, and I don't know if anyone is going to go that direction, but we have a number of programs that are currently in need of attention. We have the Compost Collective program that we are trying to figure out how to reboot. We've got the sexual assault / domestic violence investigative position we're going to have to start renegotiating. We've got committees that haven't actually met yet, including all of the work on trying to reallocate and reorganize what we're doing with library services with Goleta. The parking study is going to start up soon, and there's going to be a hectic process of doing community feedback from that, with all of the meetings associated with it. And I think there's not just going to be complicated work that gets into that. I think it's going to be extremely controversial work that's going to end up diverting a lot of our time dealing with PR battles related to it. And I say all of that and then note that other people may have known about it before today. I only learned today that Sydney has been working double time this past month. And was specifically citing, in no small part, the Halloween event and all of the pop-up community feedback events. And these are things that we're going to be seeing lots of if we're going to be doing all of the parking work and continuing mobility stuff. So I think that we should let IVRPD lead. We should support them as we can. We should scale back the amount of money that we're looking to spend on it. And under no circumstances, though, do I believe that we should be scaling up the amount of staff time that we're allocating towards this task.
Thank you, Director Friedman. Any other comments or questions from the board? Director Topliff?
I think Director Friedman made a lot of good points, which I agree with. I also think that we just recently got so dazzled with the Halloween festival. And even though our spring festival is kind of on a growing path, and we have had growing pains about making it be what we wanted it to be, I still feel really committed to having just a really splendid event like that again. And I think I also don't want to see our staff work it because it's too much. I like that there's the emphasis on safety, which is really our bailiwick. And then I just think that, you know, we've learned so much since last year, and that I think that it's really worthy for us to continue to build this tradition around the Spring Festival. And I do support spending a commensurate amount of money as we did before. And it seems like it's kind of in line with what IVRPD spent on Halloween as I look at their budget and try and interpret it. And, you know, I think the community deserves these fantastic events. So I'd really like to see us do it.
Thank you, Director Topliff. Any other comments or questions from board members? I don't think I'm seeing any. So I think now is a good time to open it up for public comment. If there's any members of the public that have thoughts on this.
I do. So one thing is that part of my music industry situation is I'm trying to be a global holiday music producer. And I don't know if we're talking about Deltopia or something separate. I don't know if there's a certain date, but I was trying to do something like on the equinoxes, but related to what you've already all discussed is, I don't know if maybe a parade, even a small one. I don't know if the Greeks would be involved in floats or even something maybe not necessarily as big as a float, but, just something generally. And the one thing we're overlooking is, I don't know what university in America has a sexier reputation than UCSB. I mean, you guys are on the beach, so if there's this big party going on, if there's a third, some corporate person that has broadcast rights, that could probably fund the whole thing. Even if you only want to put out a little bit, or maybe get some of the students involved to put out something, like a DVD afterwards, or broadcasting on Hulu, on one of the streaming services while it's going on. I don't know, but that's something that you might want to give consideration to as well.
Thank you for your comments. Go ahead, Mr. Surya.
Well, thank you for the invite, Jay. It was like last minute, I'm in the lab doing experiments, and I was like, oh, maybe we should get over there. So the first thing I think that we need to do is get away from the word Deltopia. We need to do that. It has, sadly enough, it has connotations of problems in the past. Spring Festival is a great idea. With that said, it should be something that should cater to the local population. The biggest problem whenever you have any sort of an increase or spike in crimes, incidents, sexual assault, anything like that, it's always from an out-of-town element. This is a fact. This is a proven fact. It's been documented. The thing about it is you should focus on the local population. Getting IVRPD involved is definitely a good idea, especially given the success of the Halloween festival. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of people that did attend the Halloween festival were from out of town. They were families, children. There was people from Lompoc that came down for that. That was awesome. You're not going to get that for Spring Festival, but what you can get is a population, make people proud of where they live. This is Isla Vista. We live here. We can definitely focus on the local aspect of it. I don't know how you're going to do that. You can't curtail people from saying, hey, come on to Ivy and let's get, let's do this and do that. I don't know how you can do that. But the one thing about, having a festival that Jonathan mentioned, having a little bit more widespread in IV, one of the suggestions I would probably throw out there is maybe close off Pardal. You want to set up food trucks and stuff like that. Pardal's a good venue, and you got restaurants, you got a lot of eateries there and stuff like that. Go from one end of Pardal to the other. You might have to kind of regulate traffic on this end since no traffic light, but there is a traffic light on this end. So maybe concentrate on this end of town. Other things, the Ferris wheel, the rides and stuff like that, the mechanical bull. People love that kind of stuff. I remember one of the recent concerts, they had a mechanical bull, and there was like a line for that thing. Like you wouldn't believe. I sat there and I even went on it. I sucked. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff like that that we can do as a community. I think that the focus, and the gentleman brings up an interesting thing, getting the Greek system involved as well. I know that during Deltopia, there I am using that word. I know that they have festivities going on, so why not get them to kind of be a little bit more in the public, like the gentleman here said. I totally agree with that. There's a lot of ways. We got some time to think about this. But safety is a concern. Safety is a concern. Definitely having those entities there in place to help out when they can. That's a great idea. I'm definitely behind that. Letting IVRP take the lead on this. Well, if you're gonna use the parks, you have to let them take the lead because that is their responsibility. But collaboration between the two agencies would be fantastic. And that way, I think we could all learn from each other. Also, but one of the biggest things is I think a Nexus advertising campaign to let people know, hey, don't invite a bunch of people to come from out of town and destroy your home. This is your home. This is where you live. Don't let them do that. Kind of take a little advertising campaign on that. Put out door hangers or something like that. Let people know that we want this to be a fun event. Spring Festival in Isla Vista, that sounds awesome. But you also want to make it to where we can be proud of it. It's not going to be, look at what happened to the Cal Poly Royale. I use that as, I don't know, this is a little bit before some people's time, but the Cal Poly Royale was a great event, and then it got out of control in a situation that the last time it was really big, it was, I believe it was 1990, 91, led to a riot, and then everything went downhill from there. We don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen. Like I always say, it's a community we can be proud of. Let's give the community something that locals can be proud of. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Surya. Very good ideas in there.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Any other comments on Zoom, Jonathan?
No.
All right. Well, I'll bring it back to the board. So the 3 options that staff is asking on direction for is sort of which direction to go. And at least for me, I don't know if I can say any of us really have enough information about which of those 3 directions is the right way to go. But I do think if anything is to come out of this, I think that it may be helpful for us to give direction on just working with IVRPD, because it seems like that's one thing that we have consensus on the board about.
Yes.
Is that we want to have that really be an enshrined commitment in whatever it is that we do. And we may have disagreements about what the event looks like, what the funding levels look like. I think those are valid questions that we will be able to discuss once we have more formal plans in front of us. But I think that in order to give staff some clarity on what direction to move, it would be good for us to have that motion in place. So that's my proposal. If anyone has feedback or wants to make that motion, we'll consider it. Director Flaherty.
Just to add a few more ideas too. I definitely support a big thing that we've talked about in all of these conversations, the common thread is making sure that whatever we do, it is representative of our local community in Isla Vista. And so a lot of that, we have such a vibrant art community, and that's like a lot of what we want to be celebrated in this festival. And so I think, yeah, having as many local vendors as possible, local, like people who make jewelry, stuff like that. I wonder if like we could even have like little payments to them for them to come here and do almost an open market using the community center, stuff like that. And then something on the safety side is we could consider, if this would be allowed, like Narcan distribution too, to help prevent any overdoses. That might happen, like brief training on that as well. And then for food vendors too, like maybe subsidizing the first 50 people who show up for a meal, stuff like that. So I still am definitely committed to spending money on this and making sure that this really is a great event and a high quality event. And whether that doesn't go all to a production company, but is, split up more into those different avenues, I think is definitely something that we will talk about as, we get more specifics on what things might cost, stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely committed to that relationship with IVRPD too. So just a few little other ideas.
And not having our staff do too much of the work.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Any other thoughts or feedback from the board? Anything from staff? Is this direction that we're going, like the adequate amount of direction? I know it's not exactly what's written on paper, but
it's good. In terms of next steps and timeline. So what the timeline last year was that we got our RFP on the December 12th to 13th equivalent meeting. We approved it, we published it, we had a deadline of mid-January. That wasn't enough time because the way production companies, and now we know this, production companies are pretty much offline in December and early January. So we would still have to do an RFP. It's above the $25,000 limit, Ross, if I'm correct, that we reviewed a couple meetings ago. We still need to do an RFP no matter, unless we want to spend less than $25,000 on a production company, but it could be a shorter timeline. It doesn't have to, if we published it in January, beginning of January, we could have it due at the end and start our plans with them while our staff does some pre-planning in January, just to get it going, based on whatever we want to do. So that's kind of my thoughts on the next steps is, I don't know if we'll make it to the December 13th to have a fully fleshed out RFP that we want to put out to bid. We can have an update on December 13th of where the conversations have been, and then maybe look at January 10th for when we would have an RFP where we would know really what direction we're going to go and how much we're going to spend on that versus spend on other avenues. And then, yeah, but we would, I think our staff would maybe start the planning based on, like, let's say the 13th, we agree to some parameters and we've met with IVRPD and they're on board. I think it would be good for us to start some planning and then hand off things to a consultant as we bring them on.
Gotcha. Well, that timeline makes sense to me. I know it's a tight one, which just feels weird to say because we're still in November, but we're up against this same sort of timeline last year too. So time is of the essence. And I'm glad that there's still time for us to continue to have these conversations, because maybe there's even additional expertise that the Park District could bring to the table in terms of how they are able to have efficiencies with their vendors, in their planning for the Halloween event. So do we want to make that motion of just directing staff to work with the Recreation and Park District on the execution of the Spring Festival?
I'll make that motion.
Made by Topley, seconded by Flaherty. Is there any specific public comment on that motion? It's not seeing any. We'll move back to the board. Any last comments?
Who are the motions? Who are the two?
Direct staff to work with IVRPD to plan the Spring Festival.
And then this
Carrie made
person.
it and I second.
All right, so with that, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Topliff,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. I'm looking forward to more discussion about this. I think we all are. There's possibly no item that we work with or work on that has more both public interest and attention than throwing a big party. So with that said, I'm sure that there'll be more robust discussions about this in the future and opportunities for engagement. So with that, we're gonna move to item 5, which is reports from members of the board. Any reports that any board members would like to give? Not seeing any. The one I mentioned this a little bit already, but just wanted to give a big shout out to the Ivy Compost Collective and our director Carly for putting on a really fun pumpkin smashing event. They were able to acquire many pumpkins from around Isla Vista, smash them all and use them for the compost piles. Carly shared with me that the pumpkins are very good for the compost because of the nutrients that they have. So I thought that was really cool. It was just such a fun little event and was a great opportunity for them to engage with some new volunteers. So it was really fun to be there and get some anger out too, swinging the baseball bat at the pumpkins. So a great event. That's the end of my report. Any standing and ad hoc committee reports?
We will have a policy committee meeting next week.
All right, good to know. We'll move to report from district council.
Thank you, President Brandt. As you can probably tell, I'm sick, so I'll keep my report short. We're continuing to monitor COVID as it relates to the governor's proclamation of a state of emergency. He has indicated, at least as of about a month ago, that his intention was to rescind that order at the end of February in 2023. However, the governor has left himself some room to change that direction if the numbers don't support that direction come the time. So we're continuing to monitor the increases in the number of cases being reported and hospitalizations to see how that might affect the governor's decision-making process. And that's particularly relevant for the use of AB 361 for having remote participation by members of the board. You'll recall through the various extension resolutions to continue to use those remote appearance provisions of the Brown Act. The first condition is that a declared state of emergency exists. So if the governor does rescind the state of emergency, then AB 361 will no longer be available. And so we'll be in this weird kind of 10-month gap between the unavailability of AB 361 and the new provisions that will go into effect under AB 2449. So meaning we'll be back to the regular teleconference provisions of the Brown Act with all of the posting requirements and public accessibility. So we'll continue to monitor. If it looks like the governor's going to change course, I'm sure he and his staff will let us all throughout the state know how that decision might be impacted. And of course, if anything changes in the meantime, we'll advise Jonathan and the board. If the other item is just in the report from the general manager, you've seen Jonathan refer to Pam as a HR attorney. Pam Lee is a partner in our office, and she has a lot of time and expertise in personnel and labor matters. When the matters reach a level of complexity or detail that are beyond my general knowledge, I bring in Pam and folks in our labor and employment group to assist. So that's been a very fruitful and productive working relationship. And I'm glad that we've been able to provide that service to Jonathan directly and to the district at large. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you for that report, Council. Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none. Hope you feel better soon. We'll go to report from General Manager.
I am not sick, but I got sick a couple of weeks ago, and they said you'll have
I think we all did.
Yeah, the three of us who were here. So I'm going to report on the things that our staff who couldn't be here today. Also, I'll do their reports for them. Community engagement. So this is exciting. Sydney has made a partnership with Duffel, the convenience delivery company in town, to become a partner with delivering messages from us with their deliveries. They have met a huge volume, so they'll be able to reach most of the community themselves, so helping us out. So that's really great news. Compost Collective, the Food on Wheels event is happening right now, so people are able to donate their unwanted food items at the food co-op. There's a bin, or they can sign up with us to get a pickup. And then, like Spencer said, the pumpkin smash went amazing despite the rain. We did have to cancel due to rain on the Monday, and we moved it to the end of the week and still got a great turnout. So great event. Ivy Beautiful has been focusing very hard on graffiti the past few weeks, getting through the backlog of the graffiti issues that they've had found. And now they're going to be doing outreach to businesses to start working with them to see what kinds of beautification opportunities there are in partnership with the businesses in the commercial area. So looking forward to that. In the community center, community room, we sent out a thank you email to all our partners for the year, and that highlighted 680 events so far as of last week that happened this year in the community center and the community room. That was great to see. And this Saturday, there's going to be a vegan food fair from 6 to 9. So that's going to be highlighting vegan food in Isla Vista that you can get from different restaurants and businesses. So that's great. The STEP grant, so much work has been going on the STEP grant lately. We've had many focus groups. We kind of took a different approach, like Sydney said, to have more individualized ones with stakeholders. We've had almost all of them at this point. So those have been extremely fruitful. I've sat in on most of them, not the ones when I was on vacation, but the rest. And people are sharing some great feedback with us. Today, Sydney and Fiona were out there all day on Camino Corto and Abrego doing our second pop-up. This one was much different. It was more intercepting people as they used things like bike paths and bus stops to talk to them rather than us putting up new changes ourselves. So we got to speak to, we were focusing mainly on families and people commuting to Ivy Elementary School. And then the new idea that the focus that we've been looking at is the mid-block crosswalk at Camino del Sur, where the St. George Youth Center is. So we're specifically testing that because it's been coming up so much as something that we've been hearing about. Parking, we're still waiting on a decision from UCSB on the parking study funding, but we're ready to go once we get that. Community garden and festival, you got the update on the agenda today. Still, I just want to put it back in everyone's mind. I mentioned it a few times ago, but we're going to want to do a retreat in late January or early February, depending on the scheduling of when we do our appointment to replace Director Bertrand and how that plays out. We'll want to make sure we get a board retreat done after that new person is seated. So just put that in your minds, probably early February at this point, mid-February. Tomorrow, I'm going to attend that meeting about cliff safety with different stakeholders and hope to hear the update from the second district. And then so I mentioned that, yeah, my vacation went well. And I do have another one to clear me out to 15. I was at 30 and I'm trying to get down to 15. So the week before Christmas, I'll be out and then I'll be not at my CAP anymore. So that's it.
Excellent. Thanks for that report, Jonathan. And I never miss an opportunity to highlight the awesome work that our staff is doing. I really want to give a shout out to Sydney and Fiona. I just think it's so cool that the way that we do outreach is we just go out in the community and talk to people and ask people what they think, because that's how we reach the people that may not be inclined to come and talk to us. So great work on that, and love to see all these ideas that you're testing. Director Topliff.
Replacing Director Bertrand?
You got elected to the Goleta School Board,
Oh,
and those two offices are incompatible. So
Oh.
we'll need to
replace him in January.
replace them. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
And have we received a resignation letter yet?
No. I'll work with him and Ross to square all that out.
Gotcha.
And so we'll like make a notification to the community that we're looking for applicants?
Yeah, there's a legal process we have to follow, and our own outreach process that we'll use to get the word out there. to let
Out
people
there
know.
in Camino Corto, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
we've developed all these new contacts over the last year, so hopefully we'll be able to reach a lot of people for this.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing that. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that we will have 2 board members who are leaving our board. I believe the next meeting is the last meeting. Is that correct?
This is the last,
This is the last meeting.
What?
I'm pretty sure if
I
I,
think so, because the election results haven't been certified.
that's true. We'll check in on that. But I do think- Yeah.
Well, we will have resolutions on our next board agenda to recognize the service of Director Bertrand and Director Clarity.
It was December 2nd last year when the turnover happened, or 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
We're not ready.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure out. a
Not ready
ceremony.
either.
This is the last meeting you can vote on, I guess, unless we have a special meeting before then.
Well, we'll
come.
we'll figure it out. We'll figure out what the deal is, because
Yes,
I've
please.
been trying to find out when it's being certified.
Yeah.
The earliest would be, I guess, next Tuesday.
Okay, so
So,
we'll work that out then.
but yes, we'll be looking forward to some ceremonial activities, I think, before we get into the meat of our next agenda.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions from the board? Well, I'll also highlight too, I'm really glad that you shared the just amazing report on how many events we've had at the community center. So if Maya, if you're still on, big shout out to you for making all of that happen. We really went from 0 to 680, so that's pretty incredible.
Well, Maya's done a good job, and now I'll just quick addition to my report. Maya's done a great job of creating a spreadsheet that lists every event we've ever had and different coding for, was it recurring? Was it, outside group, inside group? So now we have all that 680 events, and we can run some data analysis on. So she's already started to do that. Like what percentage are recurring, which are single events and things like
Nice.
that. So worked really hard on that.
Excellent. Very cool to hear. Any other questions for Jonathan? Well, then I think with that, we're going to close board member, or we're going to close reports. Our next meeting date will be on December 13th. That's why you're saying it's the last one. Yeah, 'cause it's 2 weeks. I'm all thrown off by the calendar. December 13th at 6 p.m. on Zoom and here in the community room, 970 Embarcadero Del Mar. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Freeman. Any further comment? All right, let's do roll call.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Topliff,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thanks, everyone. We will see you on the 14th.
Yay.
So close.